So this video will serve to introduce us to word problems and ease our way into it. So at this point, we've covered all the mechanics of how to solve algebra equations, but not really the applications of them. These were all scattered throughout the sections 2.1 to 2.5, but I've decided to do them on their own and with a little bit of a focus towards these word problems. So I'm going to suggest in this video a general approach to word problems and really try and reinforce the strategies that you have for dealing with word problems. And so hopefully that this will outline that. Oftentimes the strategies that I've suggested in math seem silly at first when you know the answer, and that's the way they're going to feel in this video. But when things get more complicated, having a strategy to fall back on can really give you what you need in order to get to the answer. And so hopefully, yeah, we can master these word problems through this second part of chapter 2. So the first thing you want to do is read and then read the question again and reread it a third time and decide what kind of problem it is. We're going to do 6 different kinds of word problems, generally 2 a day for the second week of this chapter. And so really deciding what kind of a problem it is going to be key, because I will give us a strategy for each kind of word problem, a way of thinking about, a way of dissecting it to build it, to break it down and then build it back up ultimately into an answer to the word problem. The next thing you're going to do is choose a letter to represent the unknown. So you're going to choose your variable. You can choose whatever letter of the alphabet you like, but we're only going to be dealing with one variable. So the one variable will represent multiple things in that. So yeah, we'll talk about that one more. So write a let statement. So it could be that let x be the number of, I don't know, potatoes, right? It's simple, doesn't have to be beautiful, doesn't have to be awesome. Sometimes a chart or a diagram is going to do for a let statement. So the let statement is your first mark, and it's worthwhile because sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're hard, but it's worth being intentional with. The next thing you're going to do is translate the words into algebra. In other words, you're going to make an equation. And so you'll do that act of translating the English language into algebra in order to build your equation. The next thing you're going to do is solve that equation. And solving the equation, you want to then give your answer in a simple sentence. Don't forget the value and the unit. So you get 1 mark for your answer, not what x equals, but for answering the question. And so that is your 3rd mark. You can always check that your answer makes sense. You could verify it left side, right side. You could reflect back on the question and decide, does that make sense at all? Like, is it really 7,000 potatoes for dinner, or is it 7 potatoes you're going to cook for dinner? That kind of a thing. So do check that it makes sense, because you should have some concept of what's going on. So we're going to practice a little bit here, a bit of a review back to the stuff that we did in chapter 1. So really just that translating of words into algebra. So if you were just to translate these ones, these are just expressions. And we're going to move into equations down here. So these ones are just expressions. And remember, with expressions, you couldn't solve expressions, but we did do this with this translation. So A says the sum of A and 2 times B. B question says 5 times M increased by 1. This one says 5 less than 3 times x, and with the 5 less than, it has to go out the back. The order matters with subtraction. The product of x and y divided by 3. E says 2 more than twice x, so you'd have a 2x plus 2. F is 4 less than 5 times n. G is the product of twice A and B. That one seems kind of ambiguous. I think it needs some comma in there or something. I'm not sure that I totally agree with that one. But anyway, the sum of S and T divided by 5. And again, that one also seems a little ambiguous to me. I feel like we could debate those two, but those I think are the most likely answers. You can also see in these questions the dangers of using S's. They look a lot like my 5s, as Z's look a lot like my 2s. So just be aware of the letter that you choose and how you write things. So down below, really just a small extension, we're going to be making equations this time. So A says the sum of a number and 5 is 17. So a number and 5 is, anytime you see is, it's an equal to sign, 17. B says the sum of a number, so that could be an X or an A or whatever letter you want, and 8 is 35. Just this act of translating from the English language into a line of algebra, into an equation. 4 more than 5 times a number is 6 times that same number. So in these ones, and I haven't been modeling that one this too much. So 4 more than, maybe you just cross that out and put plus 4. 5 times a number is 5x. The is an equal to sign. And 6 times the same number, you just rewrite that as 6x. So processing it little by little can help you build up into this equation. I find that the best way I have to explain it is just by reading the words, which is not obviously a way of explaining. So sometimes breaking it up little pieces, like I just did in C here, where I crossed pieces out and rewrote them, can actually really, really help. So D says 3 times the sum of a number and 7. Oh my goodness. Okay, sum of a number and 7, but we want 3 times that, is 4 times that same number. Give these ones a try. And if any of these feel debatable, then please follow up with me or ask. If you have a great tip, kind of like what I was doing with the dissecting it or crossing it out or processing the information, then share it with us, because this can be totally straightforward or it can be really tricky for people. And so take your time with it, and let's see how we can make it work for you. Okay, so we've practiced that skill of translating, and now we're going to do the simplest of word problems around. And I am going to reinforce or use these examples to reinforce the process. If you remember, there are 3 marks for a word problem. The first one is for your let statement. The next one is for your equation. And the third mark is for answering the question. Okay, and so these ones are not necessary. I know you can get the right answer without doing all 3 things, but we're going to use them as simple questions that we can use to practice this. So this one says, solving an application. So as simple a word problem as we can. So the sum of a number and 4 is 17. So I'm going to say let x be the number. You can use whatever letter you want. We get a mark for that in this process. Now we need the equation. So we're going to do that act of translating. The sum of a number and 4 is 17. We've got our second mark in our word problem. Easy peasy. Stay patient. I know it's not necessary to do all 3 of these things in order to get to the answer. So the next thing we're going to do is solve for x. And we get that x equals 13. And you might be saying, yes, I already knew that, Marianne. Thanks for 3 steps to all this. And so the final answer is the number is 13. I'm not needing, full proper sentences here, but you do have to be intentional about each of these 3 steps, because when things get more complicated, these 3 steps are also more complicated, and it gives you that structure, it gives you that process that allows you to do things that are more complicated when you need to break them down into smaller steps. So B says the sum of a number and 8 is 35, so let, I'm going to say y be the number. Doesn't matter what letter you choose. So the sum of y and 8 is 35. We've got our second mark for that. We're going to solve for y by subtracting 8 on both sides. So we get y equaling, what is that even? 27. Should have known that one. I froze up. So the number is 27. The last two, also really, really simple, maybe not necessary to do 3 steps for, but they do give us a chance to deal with more words here. So the C question is about an appliance store charging $999 for a washer and dryer. The washer sells for $649. What does the dryer cost in the combination? So let X be the dryer cost. That's what we're looking for. If I were to translate this into an equation, and this might be more of a challenge to do because you could just do it intuitively, we would have the cost of the dryer and the cost of the washer equaling the total cost of the package. And you might get to the answer another way, and if so, write down your equation, whatever that equation is. I'd subtract from both sides, and I'd get what you knew all along, the cost of the dryer. So my final answer is $350. And that would do for an answer. You don't need to overcomplicate it beyond what I'm already encouraging you to overcomplicate things with. Okay, so D. D says in a school election, Carla got 11,320 votes out of a total of 18,540. How many went to her opponent? And so we're going to say let X be the opponent, or the number of votes for the opponent if you really want to use all the words, but I'm saying just be intentional about what you're setting X to represent. So X, the number of the opponents plus the number of votes that Carla got, should equal the total number of votes. And perhaps you already knew that you were going to have to subtract these, and maybe that's the equation that you wrote out, in which case you get a mark for the equation. It doesn't have to be exactly the way I do it. So we get an X value of 7,220 votes. And the question is, did Carla win, right? That's what we want to answer. So this many votes, so her opponent got 7,220 votes, and Carla won. And that's your answer to the questions that are asked. So that's our intro to word problems. I know they're not real scary or hard, maybe annoying, but we're going to move on to the other 6 kinds of word problems in the coming in the coming videos, and we'll work through each one, and you'll see that this structure of having a process to go through, so an X statement, an equation, and an answer to the question really can help frame your thinking around word problems, and hopefully turn them into something that you don't totally hate. That's my main goal. Awesome. Thanks a lot.